I gave this AI bot $30,000 to invest in crypto for me 2 years ago, and here's exactly what's happened since. Many of you guys who have been following me for a couple of years now were probably pretty familiar with my various experiments, trying different bots and strategies to try to find the perfect way to make a boatload of money. And some of my earliest experiments trying out different bots and strategies were using this AI bot called Stoic. It was an AI bot that had all these crazy promises about all the cool things it could do. But ultimately, after testing it, it was underwhelming and I ended up abandoning it. That was around 2021. And 2 years later, in 2023, they launched the successor to that bot. So like the 2.0 version of that bot called Stoic Meta. And they say it's everything that they learned over the past 8 years when it comes to AI, when it comes to all their various different strategies, put into one new upgraded strategy that's supposed to be like a bajillion times better. The company behind this syndicator uses something called hybrid intelligence. It's actually a really genius way to use AI. Basically, the idea is they have human analysts who are like submitting the initial data, right? So human analysts are coming up with these like predictions on what the market's going to do, what certain tokens are going to do, etc. And there's a ton of these analysts that are doing this. And those analysts feed the data into the AI. And then the AI uses like all of its knowledge on macro, all of its knowledge on the markets, everything that it's learned over the past 8, 9, 10 years now. And based on that and their data comes up with a prediction. And the human analysts that are like feeding this data into the AI have like a super consistent track record of being accurate, right? So they used to run, I don't know if they still do it, but they used to run these competitions where basically there was like 100,000 people. They would compete to like see who was like the best at predicting what the market would do. The ones that were really accurate got a score and kind of worked their ways up the rankings. And the ones that were not very accurate worked their way down the rankings and they would win prizes and all kinds of stuff. And the ones that are super accurate get their data weighted really heavily for the AI. So the AI knows like these guys are usually pretty right. So the AI takes all their data, takes all the stuff it knows, and then it comes up with like a final prediction. And then based off that prediction, it can deploy one of 200 different sub-strategies to profit off of that prediction. And basically their promise is that like this strategy can produce strong returns no matter if the market's going up, down, sideways, or whatever. Like it's just like the super AI infused amazing strategy that makes you a ton of money. And this has to do with the fact that like the strategy you'll use like shorting and leverage and all kinds of complicated stuff when it's investing, much more complicated than maybe your average investor is just like buying a token and holding it. It's doing all this crazy stuff. In fact, they say that were Stoic Meta deployed during the last bear market, while Bitcoin was down 76%, Stoic Meta would have been down just 9%. By the way, just to pause really quick, I was given the chance to ask Stoic Meta certain specific questions and have it kind of like give me the answers to those questions, including when will alt season start? How high will Bitcoin go in 2025? How high will ETH go in 2025? And when will we see the next major crypto bull run? And Stoic Meta gave me an answer to each of these questions, which I'm going to reveal a little bit later in this video. So make sure you keep an eye out for that. Anyways, even though the original Stoic bot didn't end up doing very well, I was really interested in trying this new upgraded bot, especially from a lot of the stats and promises that they were making with some of their marketing. The only issue was that I'm US based. And in order to use this strategy, you have to be able to access Binance.com because again, of the shorting leverage and all that kind of stuff. Usually like all the cool stuff that here in the US, we're not allowed to do because of like regulations and stuff. Stoic Meta needs that stuff in order to succeed. So it's only available on certain exchanges. It's like an API that plugs into the exchange and trades your funds for you on the exchange. So you're not like sending your money to this bot or anything like that. Instead, you have money on an exchange and you're just giving it API access to like trade for you and do a bunch of stuff. I ended up reaching out to the team really just to ask if like they were going to add Coinbase anytime soon, or if there was any exchanges that they knew of that where I could access a strategy that were accessible to US based people. And there wasn't, but they did have an alternative way for me to test this strategy. They said that they would deposit $30,000 into a Binance account themselves and then deploy the Stoic Meta strategy and let it trade it, allowing me to keep any of the profits Stoic Meta made over that $30,000 they initially deposited. Obviously, they were offering this because they were hoping that I would make content about it, make videos about it, etc. And that would be good marketing for them. But they didn't actually make any sort of agreement with me. Like I didn't have to sign anything or anything like that. They just like said, hey, we're going to do this. If you want to make content or don't want to make content, say whatever you want, all that kind of stuff. So for full disclosure, even though the title of this video says I put $30,000 into this AI bot, etc., that's more for like clickbaity, I guess, purposes. It'd be really complex and hard for me to describe what I'm saying to you in a title. But it was actually Syndicator that put the initial $30,000 into this bot. Some people could see that as a conflict of interest as far as like my unbiasedness in this review. As always, anytime there's anything that could even remotely affect my bias towards something I'm talking about, I'm always upfront and disclose that. Anyway, so they put $30,000 in this Binance account. They gave me access. They gave me all the login info. I got to turn on a VPN in order to access it, but I can go in there and I can see what it's doing. And the first month of running this thing, I made around 39%. It was immaculate timing. Obviously, January 2023 is right after 2022. This is like basically the point when the market, almost the exact bottom, like a month off the exact bottom, is when this thing started. So it just upfront, perfect timing. And in my first month, my $30,000 turned into $41,000. And also say up front, this strategy is very, like Stoic Meta specifically, is very Bitcoin heavy. It's a very Bitcoin heavy strategy. They have another strategy called Stoic Meta Long, and that's more of like an alt heavy strategy. But Stoic Meta, the one I'm talking about, is a very Bitcoin heavy strategy. By month 6 of doing this strategy, my $30,000 was worth around $52,000, basically almost doubling my money in just 6 months. And by the end of year 1, my $30,000 was worth $83,626, basically almost tripling my money in 1 year with this strategy. But again, it's a very Bitcoin heavy strategy. And 2023 was even though it didn't feel like it, if you're in the markets, it was a great year for crypto. Now, obviously, being that the strategy is very Bitcoin heavy, it's worth comparing what would have happened had I just bought Bitcoin on the same exact day and held it. So like if I'd have bought Bitcoin with $30,000 on that exact same day and held it for a year versus had I invested in Stoic Meta, what's the difference there? And had I bought Bitcoin with $30,000 on the exact same day, my Bitcoin would be worth $81,000 versus Stoic Meta being worth $83,000. So there's a slight difference there. Not a huge difference, but that is an extra $2,000 I made doing the Stoic Meta strategy than I would have holding Bitcoin, which was one of the greatest or best performing assets of 2023. So that is impressive considering Bitcoin was one of the great, best performing assets of 2023, and Stoic Meta outperformed it, making me an extra $2,000. Now, at this point, it meant that I could take out $53,000. That's a lot of money. $53,000. Put it in my pocket and walk away. I did a full year of this experiment, and I could take out $53,000. Say, hey, I did a full year experiment. It's complete. Let's wrap this up. But I was so curious, what would happen if I just kept this thing going? Again, maybe I am a sucker. Maybe I just need to. Maybe I should have just taken the money. I don't know. But I was so curious. Like, man, this thing does seem to work well, but I wonder what it would do over another year. And I couldn't, the team was like messaging me on Telegram being like, hey, are you gonna take money out? You're gonna take money out. And I was like, you know what? I don't know. Maybe I'm like OCD, but it like messed me up to think about taking money out. I wanted to leave it in because I wanted like the pure results of what happened if I just kept this thing going. So I ended up not taking any money out. I left it in to let it run for another year. My thought was that, 1 year could just be luck. The markets did really good, etc. But 2 years, that's a really big time frame to have tested this thing. And I think at that point, you can, especially if it outperforms Bitcoin, you can confidently say this is a pretty dang good strategy. Now, to pause for a second, mid-2023, Syndicator launched a second strategy called Stoic Meta Long. I talked about it a little bit earlier. It's an alt-focused strategy. And they gave me kind of a similar deal. It's the same thing. I couldn't access it. And they said, hey, we're going to put $10,000 into this account, and anything it makes over that, you can keep. I didn't have to sign anything, literally the exact same kind of thing. Obviously, with this strategy being more alt-focused and maybe being a little bit more of a risky strategy, but more upside potential, I was definitely interested to see the results and how it played out. And the first 3 months of me testing this strategy out, Stoic Meta Long, it actually did horrible. And basically went down only. So first 3 months, not good for Stoic Meta Long. However, by month 6 of doing Stoic Meta Long, it went to around 14,600. So it did end up recovering the losses that it made the first 3 months. And then it made about an extra $4,300 on top of that. And that was about a year ago. So it's been a little bit over a year since it hit that 14,600. A lot's happened, obviously, over the last year. And I'm going to share the final results for Stoic Meta Long a little bit later in this video. So what ended up happening with that experiment as well. On top of that, again, I'm also going to be sharing the answers that the AI gave me to the questions they asked. So when's alt season going to start? When's the next bull market going to start? How high is Bitcoin going to go? How high is ETH going to go? It gave me answers to those questions. They're actually really interesting and fascinating. The answer the AI gave for when the bull market would start and when the alt season would start is actually totally caught me by surprise. I thought I knew what it was going to answer, but it answers something completely different. And of course, on top of all this, I'm also going to be sharing what happened with the original Stoic Meta. It's been 2 years now. And, did it end up continuing to beat Bitcoin over the last year, or did it not? I'm going to be sharing all those things in just a second, but really quick. The Obsidian Council is my private research community where I share monthly research, my entire portfolio, buy and sell alerts whenever I buy into a project, and more. We've had projects go up 1,100%, 1,200%. 1,500%, and some much more. I spend a lot of money to access a variety of newsletters, private groups, and more so I can get the best alpha in the market. And I share that alpha with the members of the Obsidian Council. Currently, the Obsidian Council is sold out and closed to new members. But if you want to join next time it opens up, make sure to join the waitlist in the description of this video. Okay, so 1 year and 6 months after starting the original Stoic Meta strategy with $30,000, the $30,000 had grown into $118,881. And fast forward to 2 years after I had originally started the Stoic Meta experiment, the $30,000 had turned into $208,324. Over 2 years, the $30,000 originally deposited into Stoic Meta turned into $208,000. That is absolutely insane to me. And of course, the major question is, how did it fare against Bitcoin? Did it end up continuing to outperform, or did it actually slightly underperform what Bitcoin ended up doing? And the results were actually pretty surprising. Had I just held Bitcoin, had I bought Bitcoin with $30,000 on the exact same day, my $30,000 of Bitcoin would have been worth 2 years later $172,000, meaning I made $36,000 extra by using the Stoic Meta strategy than I would have just buying and holding Bitcoin over a 2-year period. That is absolutely unhinged considering the performance Bitcoin has put on over the last 2 years. And the fact that Stoic Meta was able to outperform that, making me an extra $36,000. To me, that's actually really, really impressive. This also left me in a kind of conundrum because it means I could take out $178,000 if I want from this strategy and go buy a house. I don't even know. That's a lot of, that is like so much money to me. And I would be lying if I said that it wasn't a massive temptation to take that money out right now. And I've done this experiment for 2 years. I can call it quits and I'd be good. But once again, my curiosity is kind of getting the best of me because I'm just so dang curious what would happen if I just left it in there a third year. Like, I want to continue the test because, 2 years of results is amazing, but what about 3 years of results? Plus, we haven't seen what this thing would do during a bear market. And I'm really, maybe that's stupid. Actually, that is really stupid, but I am really curious to see what this thing would do in a bear market and if it would be able to hang on to those gains. And I'm not making any promises. I might take out some before I think we're going to hit the bear market just because, and maybe I'll just kind of use percentages or something like that to kind of show what it would have done. I'll of course leave some in if I do that. Or I don't know, maybe I'll be stupid and I'll just leave it all in. I guess we'll see. But I am definitely not taking any out right now. And I'm going to leave it in and continue the experiment for, I don't know, I guess for however long I decide to continue the experiment. Now, as far as Stoic Meta Long, the alt-focused alternative strategy that's supposed to have more upside potential, but is also a little bit more risky. After a year and a half of running the Stoic Meta strategy, Stoic Meta Long strategy, my $10,000 ended up turning into $20,581. Obviously, performing a lot worse than the original Stoic Meta strategy. So Stoic Meta crushed it. Stoic Meta Long did a little bit more than a double. So it about doubled the amount of money in there over a year and a half period. And granted, it did start a little bit later in the cycle, so it didn't have as much upside starting right at the initial bump up. But I think also the fact that it's so alt heavy and alts just in general haven't done incredible as a whole comparatively to Bitcoin, I think that's more likely the culprit. And I'd be more curious to see what Stoic Meta Long does when an alt season hits, and if it's able to make up that lost ground and maybe outpace Stoic Meta, the original strategy in the long run. That would be curious to me. And similar to Stoic Meta, I'm just going to continue doing Stoic Meta Long and see what ends up happening. Now on to the AI's predictions. When will alt season start? How high will Bitcoin go in 2025? How high will ETH go in 2025? And when will we see the next major crypto bull run? Here's the answers that the AI ended up giving me. And remember, it's not just an AI, it's hybrid intelligence. So their top analysts submit the initial data and their initial predictions. Then the AI takes all those predictions, uses all its little things, and then spits out an answer. As far as the Bitcoin high of this cycle, it's predicting 155,000, which personally I think is a little bit low. I was a couple months ago, everyone was saying Bitcoin high was going to be 250,000, 500,000, all kinds of crazy stuff. But I've always been pretty consistent. I think it's going to be around 170,000. 170, 180,000 is where I'm putting it. So based off my expectation, that's a little bit low, a little bit conservative. But maybe there's some market bias there because, I did ask these questions when we had the massive dip. Everyone's really bearish. So maybe there's a little bit of that in there. For the ETH high, it put $4,935, which I think is dramatically underpricing how high ETH could potentially go. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think ETH at minimum hits around $10,000 this cycle, but could go as high as 15 to 20,000. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we'll see what, as time goes on, if these predictions end up being accurate, but they're putting ETH at around 4,935. As far as when will the bull market kick off and when will alt season start, they basically gave the same date. It's separated by a day. And they're saying for the bull market on June 16th, 2025, that's when it will start. And for the alt season on June 17th, 2025, that's when it'll start, which to me, that's a really interesting prediction because typically crypto sells off in the summer. At least, especially for the past 2 years, we've seen crypto sell off in the summer. So it's just a really odd, crazy, weird prediction. I just don't know why it would spit that out or why the analysts would spit that out. But curiously enough, when Grok 3 came out, like the new AI from Elon, which depending on how you measure it, is supposed to be the most advanced AI on the planet. I went through and I had to do like a big deep search and I spent like 2 hours prompting it over and over again to like adding a bunch of data on macro, the Fed, everything. Like everything I could think of, like look at it from this angle, look at it from this angle, trying to get it to like make a prediction on when it thought alt season would start and when it thought, the next bull run would start. And what I found is like with these various AI models, the more you prompt it and have it look at different angles, it's kind of like when you register your fingerprint on an iPhone or whatever back in the day, how you had to you roll it around kind of. It's kind of like that with an AI. The more you prompt it from different angles, the more it kind of like zones in on the right answer. But the answer Grok 3 gave me, again, after probably hundreds of prompts, and I was doing deep searches, I was making it do like a deep think on things. I was like constantly going over it for errors and constantly inputting like new data and like new angles. The answers it gave me was it said that Q2 2025, so April through June, Bitcoin would hit 120K to 130K. ETH would hit 4,000 to 5,000, and we would see a mini alt season in June. And the reason I thought back to this is because when Grok said this, it also threw me off, and I was like, June? Like, why June? That's so random. And then I submitted it to Syndicator's AI, and they call them super forecasters. They're top analysts, and it also zoned in on June. I don't know. I just really thought it was curious because that's on nobody's radar. Like, nobody's talking about June alt season. Everyone's thinking like beginning of the year or end of the year, but like summer's no man's land, everything sells off. That would definitely cause some massive, massive pain to a lot of holders. That would definitely be max pain because a lot of people try to sell off before summer because crypto markets just tend not to do as well. If you want to sign up for Stoic and you're not based in the US, I'm sorry if you're based in the US, unfortunately, it's not available right now because of regulations and all that kind of stuff. They don't have all the tools on Coinbase and all that to be able to do what they need to do. There's a link in the description to sign up for Stoic. It is an affiliate link. I think lifetime, like using this link over the last couple of years, I made like $3,000. It's like nothing crazy for me. If you don't want to use the affiliate link, you don't have to. Just as a tip, I do think you want to have more than like $3,000 that you're putting into this thing for it to work. With the fees and all that kind of stuff that the exchange charges when you're doing trading, I think those can add up, especially if you're using a smaller amount in something like Stoic Meta. So the bigger the position you're using, the less those fees are going to like eat into your profits. And again, a reminder, it's heavily correlated to Bitcoin. So if you think Bitcoin's going to do really well from here, then this strategy should do really well. If you don't, then I don't know. I've been testing it for 2 years. Those are the results I got. I have no idea what it's going to do over year 3. As always, none of this is investment advice. You should always do your own research. I am not your financial advisor. Make sure to sign up for my free weekly crypto newsletter. It's mostly just all my content I put out each week in an easy email so you don't miss it. But occasionally I drop some other cool stuff in there as well, including sometimes I mention things I'm buying before I ever talk about it on my YouTube channel. Also, if you really want to dive deep, make sure to check out my weekly podcast, the 1 to 1 Million Podcast. I interview projects, talk about the markets, and interview various traders and experts in the crypto space. If this video is helpful, make sure to hit that like button. If you have any questions or comments, let me know down in the comments below. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the little bell next to it to be notified each time I release a new video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.